Internets! Hello, you absolute lovelies. We just got word that Spider-Man 4 in the MCU is going to be called Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, this is very exciting for a lot of reasons. Not only do we have a bit of a context for what the movie's going to be, but comic fans have a ton of details of this story going in. I thought it'd be fun to share with you some of my thoughts of this original comic storyline, give you a crib sheet, a brand new day for dummies, an abridged version of the story, so you can tell your friends all about Brand New Day, so you can share in the nerddom and the geekery and the back of the comic store conversations. And I recommend you read it yourself, but if you don't have time yet, or if you want to get a jump on things, this is a summation of why Brand New Day absolutely works for a Spider-Man 4, and why it actually might, just in title, tease a lot of big events to come in the MCU going forward. This has ramifications with Kingpin for Daredevil Season 2. This has ramifications for the X-Men. This stems from events of Civil War. This stems from events of One More Day, which was actually adapted directly into No Way Home. This title alone has lots and lots of consequences, and it's really fun because usually Marvel and the MCU doesn't directly adapt comic storylines. Even with Civil War, which ironically is integral to this storyline, they took themes and ideas and concepts of Civil War, but the Civil War movie and the Civil War comic were very, very different. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, is actually one of the only comic book movies I know, it's coming out in 2026 as well, that is directly, more or less, grabbing from one comic storyline. It is taking a beloved comic storyline, adding plenty, subtracting as needed, sure, but it is saying, like, this is the comic we're doing. To my knowledge, this is the first time since Civil War, and maybe the first time in general, Marvel has been like, hey, we're going to make this one storyline. I'd love to know in the comments below if you guys think there are other examples, and if you think there's any comic that is a direct adaptation. I think Zack Snyder's Watchmen, third act notwithstanding, is the closest we've come to grabbing a singular comic. Please, let's have a conversation in the comments below. Also, while you're pressing buttons, press like. Also, hit that subscription bell if you love comics, if you love movies, if you love TV. We talk about all that here, and I'm here at Cinemacon right now covering every studio's panel. So any comic stuff that breaks, or any movie stuff in general that breaks, be subscribed to this page so we can talk about it. Brand New Day! Let's go back to where this all started. Civil War is a very impactful moment in all of Marvel Comics across all characters. It is especially impactful for Spider-Man. Now, the Civil War story is all about the Registration Act. We've seen bits of this in the MCU. We've seen the Sokovia Accords. We've seen, heroes need to acknowledge their identity and all those things, but Marvel is very tricky in the movies because a lot of people know these characters' identities. In the comic books, secret identities are a lot more prevalent. So the Civil War story as it is didn't work as a direct one-to-one adaptation. What was cool though is the Civil War movie brought us our first ever MCU Spider-Man, which gave it that huge impactful moment for the character, but the Civil War comic book gave us the first time the entire world in the modern era of Spider-Man knew his identity was Peter Parker. Peter Parker unmasked in the Civil War storyline to show his allegiance with Registration. He said, I'm Peter Parker. Beautiful Steve McNiven art, by the way. Jonah Jameson blacking out. And it was told in a number of different series. It was told in the Civil War comic. It was told in Spider-Man stories. It was told in individual miniseries, all culminating in this one very impactful moment for Spider-Man. Now, this is very important for One More Day and Brand New Day, but it really starts with Civil War and this unmasking and what Registration Acts mean. Now, in the shows and the movies right now, we have, as I said, largely public superheroes. So we need to get to the point where the world hates and fears them to get to the X-Men. We need to get to the point where there are more masked characters to get to Registration. Right now on Daredevil Born Again, Wilson Fisk is actively holding up the masked vigilantes as a problem in New York. He is actively saying this is an issue. What's beautiful about all of this is it's all weaving together, as Kingpin should with Spider-Man, to give Mayor Fisk the opportunity to start a Registration Act in a brand new way. Tying that into Miss Marvel from last year, the mutant moment, and talking about whether or not that's something that needs to be brought to government attention is already having seeds planted. So from Civil War all those years ago not being like the comics, we are finally getting to the point where the Civil War story is more and more applicable. Now, from Civil War, we go into lots and lots of different comics, but the next big arc leading to this storyline of Brand New Day is One More Day. Now, because of Spider-Man unmasking in the Civil War comics, he then makes a deal with the devil himself in the comics, Mephisto, which has been teased also in the MCU for quite some time, who we are finally, I believe, getting in Ironheart. In Ironheart, I do believe we finally meet Mephisto because Ironheart is setting up a world where technology and magic meet. Ironheart is going to have the character of the Hood, and this character is going to be blending those worlds. The footage we've seen from Ironheart shows this, and that gives us a great gateway into Doom. In Fantastic Four, we're going to have lots of science and sorcery blending in together. We need some groundwork made, which is going to be in Ironheart, and that is a great way to bring us Mephisto. Now, once again, we didn't have Mephisto for our take on One More Day in No Way Home, so they made it Doctor Strange. That's our resident magic person in the MCU, so it worked. But in the comic books, Spider-Man needs to protect his identity because everyone knowing he's Spider-Man puts Mary Jane in danger, puts Aunt May in danger, puts everyone at risk. And there's a lot of comic characters that hadn't been in the Spider-Man lore for a long time, so they wanted to do a status quo reset, which you may notice is kind of what's happening in line with the Spider-Man trilogy. We had Spider-Man Homecoming, Far From Home, and then Spider-Man No Way Home. This is the new status quo. Not only does this have a new director in the great Destin Daniel Cretton, who's going to bring a visual panache and style. He even talked about web slinging, action, all of that in the panel. They're already thinking about it. They're already mapping it out. But he's going to bring a new style to Spider-Man. I think this is a similar new style to Spider-Man by trying to bring this new thing after the Brand New Day storyline. That's the goal of a new status quo, but to kind of throw it back to simpler times. We've talked a lot about Spider-Man 4 being either a cosmic multiversal story or a grounded story. There was a similar thing going on in comics where it was Spider-Man's continuity is so messed up, it's so convoluted, there's so much going on, that the idea of One More Day was to clean swipe it and to make things back to basics, which again is what Spider-Man 4 is trying to do, again making the Brand New Day title very interesting. So after making the deal with the devil, no one remembers Spider-Man's identity anymore, which brings us directly to the Brand New Day comics. That's what Brand New Day is about. It's about Spider-Man starting from scratch, and when Brand New Day launches, this was in 2008, this was issue, it lasted 102 issues. I want you to keep that in mind. This lasted for quite some time. I'm going to try to find it really quick. The first issue of the Brand New Day concept was Amazing Spider-Man 546, and it ran until 647. Now, officially, the Brand New Day banner only was on the first 20 issues of this run, but if you look at the compendium, if you look at the way the comics are archived, it's 102 issues, again lasting from 546 to 647. Now, 546 is going to be that first moment and pop of the moment I'm about to describe, which is Spider-Man is only known to Spider-Man. Mary Jane and he are not together anymore. That was the thing that Mephisto wanted. The barter, the thing that he wanted for doing this was the ultimate sacrifice, which is a perfect relationship between the two of them that they could never have again. So Mary Jane is very vague in the storyline of like how things ended. We know the breakup ended poorly. We know they lived together for a time, but there is just a vague, like, they're not together anymore. Harry Osborn, who hasn't been in the comics in quite some time, is revealed to have been living in Europe. He doesn't remember who Spider-Man is. For years, he knew. J. Jonah Jameson doesn't remember anymore, but is still super stressed about Spider-Man. Spider-Man hasn't been seen in like 100 days or something like that at the time of this storyline. And what actually gets Spider-Man to come back was Robbie Robertson convincing Peter to take photos of Spider-Man again. So it's a fun back-to-basic storyline of Peter Parker needing the money, the Daily Bugle needing the money, but all of the stress of all this eventually gives Jonah a heart attack, and a new owner of the Daily Bugle comes in, modernizing the Daily Bugle a bit, calling it the DB. Now, this guy hates Spider-Man and Peter Parker, giving us that old Parker luck. Aunt May is a key factor here. Spider-Man ends up needing a roommate. There's a lot of that classic Spider-Man stuff, Spider-Man dating, and the villains are very classically Spider-Man. Instead of Lizard, we get a new character named Freak, who is like a mammalian version of the lizard. He takes some of the lizard serum and he becomes like this freakish mammal. We've also got a character that relates to both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, which a lot of the great classic Spider-Man villains do, in Mr. Negative. Martin Lee is Mr. Negative, and he actually works at the Feast Center, which was introduced in Spider-Man No Way Home. And what I think they're going to do there is, if they use Mr. Negative, what I would do is have him take over Feast because of the untimely death of Aunt May, and then maybe Peter Parker likes this guy and then gets betrayed because he realizes the duplicitousness of Martin Lee and him being Mr. Negative, and that way it ties Peter Parker to the villain, as well as Spider-Man to the villain, and the darkness of Mr. Negative, by his name, you can probably tell, would be great for a corrupting of Peter Parker right now when he's all alone and isolated and going through this new change. I think Mr. Negative could be a totally good villain. He's great in the video game. We haven't seen him, on the big screen yet. I think he's a very viable option. And we've got Kingpin pulling the strings on lots of things, because I do think all of this leads to registration. As I said at the top, Civil War right into One More Day, right into Brand New Day, all the stuff going on with Ms. Marvel, all the stuff going on with Daredevil, everything feels like it's setting up right now for registration, which is a key part of this storyline. So it has classic, small, contained Spider-Man villains. It has a lot of classic Spider-Man characters. It's a good way to bring in Harry Osborn into the movies, as well as him coming back in the comic books. It's got new, somewhat classic modern characters in the Spider-Man mythos, and this was a crazy time in the comics where they went from monthly to 3 times a month, nearly weekly, because basically there had been a Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man comic, a Spectacular Spider-Man, and an Amazing, and instead of that, they condensed it down to 1, and that was the first time since 1976 there hadn't been multiple Spider-Man titles. So they really were trying to streamline Spider-Man, which, ya lovelies, is what they're trying to do in the MCU. They're trying to lean it out, simplify, give us a classic Spidey. Will this be the story they go with point for point? Probably not. Like, that's not how the MCU works. You've got to work with that different set of paints. You've got to use that, but you've got this palette where a lot of ingredients can really work, and I think Brand New Day is a very interesting idea. And like I said, this idea, this imprint, this version of Spider-Man, 102 issues worth of storytelling. I think Sadie Sink might be Menace. I don't think they'd make her Mary Jane as Jackpot. I do not like the Jackpot character. Adding powers to Mary Jane is just so extra. She's so intelligent and capable. She's like been running Stark Industries. She's been a supermodel. She's a genius. She doesn't need powers. I don't like the character of Jackpot, but there's a chance Sadie Sink is Jackpot. There's a chance she's Menace, which is a female goblin. Again, I don't think that's what they do. I have no idea who Sadie Sink is going to play, but what's fun is there's a number of characters in Brand New Day. She could be. We shall see. I'm also intrigued, and this is something that I'm curious about some think pieces on. In the original Spider-Man trilogy, it was Spider-Man Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home. Now we've got Spider-Man Brand New Day, and the movie that precedes it, because you know they're going to make an important deal of Downey Jr. being Doom and Spider-Man obviously loving Downey, it's called Doomsday. Are we getting a day trilogy where it's Doomsday into Brand New Day, into a third day? Is that somehow going to tie in? I'm very intrigued. I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Will that have anything to do with it? Is it a coincidence? I think not. But I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Check out the Brand New Day story starting with issue 546. I did remember 546 to 564 is all branded Brand New Day, but the full story is 546 through 647. Lots of new characters, lots of hijinks, lots of classic Spidey, but modernized. It's not my favorite of the modern Spidey stuff. I love the Ultimate Spider-Man that's currently running right now, but it is a highlight of a certain era where Spider-Man was just trying to figure out who he was, which is what we're dealing with the MCU. Again, love to know what you think in the comments below. Go read some comics, you lovelies. Hopefully this helped you understand the Brand New Day a bit more. It is all about changing the status quo. It is about resetting things. It is about people not knowing Spider-Man's identity. And it is about bringing a fresh take to Spider-Man, which Destin Daniel Critton certainly seems to be doing, which I'm very excited about. So it's a brand new day for Spider-Man fans. Comment below, leave a like, hit that subscription bell. I'll see you lovely soon. Bye, guys.